Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we're back to our normal format. My computer was returned yesterday, and actually it crashed overnight. And the tech guy came out this morning and was able to get it up and running. Had a number of issues, but kind of came down to an external hard drive, which was giving me trouble. So much appreciation to all of the work that they did on it to get it up and running. So that's good. I kind of like the other videos a little bit with the fireplace. That was a neat change up, and I did order a webcam, which is on its way from Amazon. And I'm always surprised now. Amazon gives a big window of it. Could be there the 8th or it could be there the 17th. So not sure. But it hasn't been shipped yet. So, but once we get that, boy, then we're going to have some really cool scenery for videos. But here we are, and it is cold, very cold for April 8th, and I do have a fire going upstairs. My remote for my fireplace downstairs is not working. I could go over and manually turn it on, but I am not going to. I'm going to tough this one out. So I want to do some shout outs right away. Abby, you were comparing two classrooms and mentioning coming planning time and how teachers would rotate around to help different students. And again, that's a way where students then identify teachers as teachers and not here's the teacher and here's someone else who helps us. So I really like how you did that. One of the things that I've seen, there was a district that was struggling with how to introduce team teaching and wanted to pilot it on a small scale. And what they did actually is they decided that they were going to do it with some student interns. So they did have, for an entire semester, 2 very capable student interns, and they had them work in a co-teaching model with their supervising teacher. And that worked extremely well. Now, these interns were really cream of the crop. I mean, they were really on top of things. But it was then a showcase of the 2 classrooms for people to kind of come in and to watch how team teaching looked, and then the 2 interns did presentations on it that they put into their portfolios. So perpetually you couldn't do that with interns, but it was a way at least to introduce it to this district, and I think it was very successful. So I guess we'll see. I know that it's happening right now in the district I'm talking about. Maddie, you were talking about multi-age grouping, and I'm a big fan of multi-age grouping. I was very kind of intrigued when you mentioned grades 6 through 8, because typically multi-age, is elementary. So to do 6 through 8, kudos for that, big time. And you mentioned you lose track of the grade levels. It's, it's a 7th grader, that's an 8th grader, and that's wonderful to hear. Because that's something that needs to, to kind of be removed. I think when we talk about students and putting students together by kind of, I guess, where they are at, meeting them on the spectrum and not necessarily locking them into grade levels. Of course, they still have grade levels, but you're seeing them as a community. And it reminds me of what a one-room schoolhouse might have been like. Now, my grandparents had attended one-room schoolhouses, so had shared some stories, but it kind of, how you describe that kind of gave me a little bit of a feel of what that might be like. But certainly building community and then allowing the younger students possibly to benefit from the older students. And then one thing that people forget is a great way to learn is to learn by teaching. So if you have 8th graders, for example, teaching 7th or 6th. Now, you didn't exclusively mention that, but I'm just bringing that up right now. So let's see. Oh, you were mentioning about putting the day in blocks, and even though you have a system now with multi-age, you still have these confines of, well, we can only address this for this block of time. Even if we really get rolling and everything is going great, terrific discussion, when we get to this point, it's over because we have to move on to the next block. And that's an issue, with schools. It's the same issue of why we get up at a certain time in the morning and put students on a bus when we know kids typically perform better when they're not forced to, be on a bus at 6:15 in the morning. But it's something, I think the block schedule is definitely a step in the right direction versus years ago when you had, your 45-minute period or whatever it was, and that was it. So, the block giving you a larger chunk of time. But it still is not a perfect system. So I did sense your frustration with that, and could almost imagine myself in your classroom engaged, something really empowering, and people just jumping in and students, and then all of a sudden, whether it's the bell or whatever, block's done, have to move on, and then all that stuff is still going on in the brain. And another thing is, I wonder what looping would look like at a 6th through 8th grade level. I've never seen that. Boy, wouldn't that be amazing. But again, I don't know exactly how that would work, because you would have your 6th grade students are going to other teachers throughout their day too. So if it's a homeroom teacher that they would keep for 3 years, I don't know. But you really got me thinking. So Katie, you discuss culturally relevant and responsive education and teaching students to be global students, and how true that is. And actually, that's still not, I guess, endorsed by all of the school boards. Some school boards just pretty much see, let's prepare students either for our community or for Wisconsin or for the United States, and not really, going much beyond that. And I see that when I consult with school boards, just sort of the focus. And not saying that's necessarily bad, because um, it can keep people very tight to supporting local, industries. And then those industries typically have means where they get people exposed to more of a global community, because those industries don't operate in a vacuum. But there are so many virtual field trips that you can take today. I was watching a little show no more than a couple days ago, and they had the virtual reality, the new kind of glasses type things, but how you could outfit an entire class and basically, take a trip to Kenya, or to, into a cave in, China, wherever you want to go, to the moon, and then have somebody kind of guide that. And you could experience that through, through those type of, that device. And I think it's only a matter of time before you're going to see not only things like that, but kits that will augment that, such as, um, you know, certain scents, uh, certain, fragrances and things like that. I know they do that at Walt Disney. They incorporated that, even little, mist of spray and things like that. But I think you're going to have companion kits that are going to go along with some of these things, and some tactiles, and imagine, like, if everybody has their 3D things on and they're passing around, like a bison bone or something like that. But then, they're doing this while they have 3D. So I'm just saying, it's really intriguing. We can open the door to a lot of places and open other places to us, too. So through that virtual reality. But again, it is virtual reality. It's an introduction to real reality. And that's sometimes where, we want to load up on all of these virtual things, and not do the authentic things. Someone was telling me they were planning a virtual trip to the school forest and to the woods and everything. And my thought was, why don't you just go there? It's like 3 miles away, and have kids walk on pine needles and things. And, well, if we go there, then we have to pack all of the, medical stuff, and, in case and whatever. I mean, well, not really. Come on, it's 3 miles away, but um, so I think we run into this issue, and Katie, I think we're going to see that, where we're going to have a lot of virtual education opportunities open up, and we're going to have to be very careful that we don't substitute those for authentic, because of course they're going to be more cost affordable, or cost efficient to do it in a virtual way. I wanted to also mention, talking about cultural relevance. And first of all, one of the benefits or drawbacks of this format, again, is I'm not limited to 20 minutes, so this video will probably be a little longer. But culturally relevant education. And I went to a high school that was virtually completely white. And when I went to college, it was basically almost white, totally too. And I didn't work with in a group with an African American student until I became a doctoral student. I just want to point that out to the fact of how we really do have to immerse ourselves, and then as districts to make sure that students have those experiences, because I didn't, and I worked with. And I want to talk about this story. I worked in a group project. It was a qualitative research course, and the two ladies I worked with, Sheltrice and Desiree, and both were or still are African American, of course, and I'm not. And I was a little bit older than they were. And we made a wonderful group. I mean, Desiree was. We all had special talents, but she was just so talented at writing and getting everything, the transitions to go. And Sheltrice just knew what to put in and was so versed on the factual data. And then I think I was kind of the ability to blend and brainstorm. And I remember we had sticky notes on a wall of kind of what would be our priorities and what wouldn't. We were an awesome team, and we presented well. And I still keep in contact with both of them to this day. But here's a statement that I'll never forget. So we were up in Memorial Library, which is across from the bookstore down at E.W. Madison, and it was getting near, I think, 9 o'clock, and you can reserve study rooms on the different floors, and we were in one of the rooms. And we decided we wanted to order Chinese, but apparently you cannot receive takeout after 9 o'clock, or at that time there was a rule at Memorial. So we were right up against that time limit. And it was either Sheltrice or Desiree or both of them said, well, let's do the order, and then you go down and get it, because they're not gonna make any issue with a middle-aged white man. First of all, I don't know how middle-aged I was at that point, but it was true. I mean, I went down and I had no issue at all, picking it up, and it was probably like 9:30 and coming up to the room, and that was really a look back at kind of, positionality and bias and some of those things I really didn't realize in the moment until it was so obvious for them. And I don't know if that would have happened, if they would have gone down, if they would have been treated differently, but they had that perception that, the best chance of us being able to get this food was to send me down because of race and, race and age, which now looking back is really fascinating and probably was right on, and how sad that was, but also what a growth point personally for me. Now I think, the discussions on campus have evolved, tremendously since that time too. I mean, that had to be 5-6 years ago. But review of Module 5, the quality of inclusion checklist, I really like. And if you didn't open that up, go and open that up. And there's headings, and it's easy to transfer those things into IEP goals. So one of the things that I would do, I would try to do with IEP goals is have it written. I would, when possible, and sometimes I'd have to do this in the present level of educational performance, and it wasn't always easy, but I would put the student's responsibility to carry out this goal is this. Here's the school's responsibility, here's the parent's responsibility. And on the I-6, it usually got too lengthy to do that, so it would probably be something we'd put in the present level and link it back to a goal. We didn't do that all the time, and you couldn't do that all the time with IEPs, but I remember doing that to make sure that we one of the things was that we understood if it was the responsibility of the student to come to class on time, that the student had to make sure that they were, they had their watch and their timer and had their materials ready, that was their responsibility. Once they got to class, it was the teacher's responsibility to make sure that the material was presented in multiple ways to the student and that the student had access to, notes if needed, things like that. And then, the parent's responsibility was to go in and to check the course website that the teacher had built. And the notes were also there, and then some of the things that had been covered in the course and would be covered the next day, and to review it and preview it with the student. But that was really powerful, and a lot of times it worked where you could do that. But again, it's not really the way IEPs are designed. Sometimes I wonder if they shouldn't be designed that way, that everybody has a stake. But in that case, it developed because the question was, if the student is late to class, is that an issue, I guess, for the teacher, or is it an issue that we want the student to primarily have responsibility for? For example, if it's a previous teacher didn't send the student soon enough or whatever, but what was really happening was the student, had plenty of time and just was talking in the hallway and just not getting to class when they needed to, and then also not checking that they were prepared. Yet in other areas they would have materials that they would need, so it just had to become a priority. And it did. I mean, it worked out pretty well, but it was interesting to write, here's what the student's responsibility is, parent, and school. And I remember then I took a picture of it up on the whiteboard with my camera and sent it out to everybody right after that. And then one of the goals was that the student understood in their IEP what their responsibilities were, and also what the other responsibilities were of other people, and then also accommodations and self-advocacy and so forth. But co-teaching, reflecting goals, that's another document. And I think that's very useful if you're working on your PDP or SLOs, which probably most of you are. I'm grandfathered under the 6 credits every 5 years, but if you're just adding this license, I'm guessing you're under the PDP model. So, but that's a wonderful resource to use as you develop your PDP or your SLOs. So let's look ahead to Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is probably my favorite. I don't know. Chapter 7 is right up there too, and I enjoy all the chapters, but I really like universal design for learning, and that's what we talk about in Chapter 6. So there's a wide focus on UDL. Traditionally, when people think UDL, they think students with disabilities, but no, UDL is students with disabilities, English language learners, kids with different learning styles. And we talked about some of this in previous lectures, not lectures, fireside chats, but making things as accessible to everybody as possible. And, we see that in so many forms in architecture today, such as the sidewalks being built and the cutouts at the end so a wheelchair can get down or get up. But, it worked great when my kids were young and I had to take a wagon up and down. That worked super too. And, with the neighborhood kids driving their bikes around and not having to fly off of the curbs and stuff like that. But universal design and just the way that doors are designed to open and have kind of the delays and sort of not closing right away, and just there's so many ways UDL is built into technology. Well, my phone's over here, but all of our your smartphone, your iPhone, it now is a speech to text device, and that used to be something you had to order. And now, they're as good basically as most other devices. I mean, there's some phones which rival, Dragon naturally speaking. So, that's built in, the size of text is built in. Haptic feedback is built in, so you're getting more of the vibration if you're more sensory, using different types of keyboards, whatever. But there's a lot of UDL that's built into those devices, and you can also pair those with a number of different switches and things like that too. Now that gets kind of complicated. I work with some of those things, but just innate in those devices. And you're going to see endless UDL videos on YouTube. So you'll be going and perusing YouTube and looking at different UDL videos and sharing some that you think are specifically helpful to the class. So one part of UDL is differentiating, but UDL is much more than just differentiating. And I think the part that I want to really stress with UDL also is you're examining if you're targeting all of the senses, or if you're not targeting all of the senses, like most of the senses. So you're just not putting together a visual lesson, visual instruction. And I think that comes into UDL. And then also, understanding I think it was the Mel Levine, the way, different brains learn. So you're presenting in different ways. You're presenting in different color contrast and whatever it might be. But it is much more than just differentiating. I think it's also using more modalities. And I have a couple of UDL examples, but here's one that sticks out the most. I was in a class. It was a junior high school class, probably at 7th or 8th grade. And in the classroom, the teacher had exemplars of work set up everywhere. So if it was written work, which a lot of it was, there would be, here's the rubric, first of all, of what I'm expecting, that a level 1 has this, a level 2 has this, a level 3 has this, and 3 being what you would want. So here's an example of level 3 work, here's an example of level 2, level 1. But that rubric was static, so you could apply that rubric whether you were writing a report. In this case, it was World War II. So what a few students did is they wrote letters back as if they were, in Normandy or whatever, and they would write about, their experiences, but then they'd have to make sure that they were including the details, accurately. And of course, we know that war letters, were kind of censored and things like that too. So you'd have to take that into effect of, you couldn't, what you could share and what you couldn't share, how you'd have to describe things, kind of the register you'd have to use. So that was interesting, that you had that, and then also that one was that you could describe where your sources came from. But so there were some exemplars of those documents, and exemplars of, basically what I would say is a diorama, but to a much higher degree. So there would be exemplars that the teacher brought out for those. Now, through this whole process, one of the things that the teacher had the students do, and I believe they worked in groups, they would take their own work and they would take it and rate it against the exemplar as they were doing it. And they'd say, we're kind of at like a 2, and here's what we have to do to get to a 3. And the teacher wasn't even involved in that. They might come to the teacher and say, we know this is similar to a 2, compared to a 3, and here's an idea we have for 3, or we don't really have ideas of how to get up to 3. Can you help us to better understand maybe, some different directions we might look into? But a lot of that was student driven. And then pretty soon it was students helping other students and kind of cross-rating, which really got to be interesting. There was a propaganda. There were some students that developed propaganda posters and literature. And one of the things that was interesting with that was it also pointed out the discrimination and kind of the bias and positionality and the centric view, of the United States, and how posters, of the time were made where the Japanese soldiers, would be short, would have thick glasses, and, not much muscle. And that was the posters, and that um, it was just incredible how some of these different things, and then also buying war bonds. There was a propaganda of if you're not doing that, you're not supporting the war effort, and kind of that weighs on your conscience. Um, there was also a really neat performance that was put on. Some students did a mock scrap metal drive. So they basically went around the class and they were collecting paper. And the paper then was going to be taken and mashed down and then made into new paper that the military was going to be using to print maps or whatever. Um, or it would still be used at home, for making, new newspapers or whatever. But so they talked about these drives of how they would go through, and metal drives and things like that. But it was real tangible. And again, there was a level 1, a level 2, a level 3 of that. And I remember students made some ration tokens too. So they incorporated that into students being able to get so much from a mock, like student store. So to get a pencil, might take 5 tokens or something like that. So yeah, it was really incredible to see. I'm not doing it justice for how awesome it was. And there was also a radio broadcast that 3 students did, and they did it as if, because every night in England they had in Great Britain they had broadcast, and probably across the United States too, but they were doing one of these broadcasts which was really purposely upbeat and had certain period music that was tied into it that then they found on the internet. But the whole purpose of that was to keep people's spirits up, and motivation and so forth. But you can imagine going through that. Now that's one example of World War II. I mean, there could be so many other things, but now if I'm in that class and I've gone through that, that's just not a book to me anymore. And that's just not somebody going and showing some things, or that we watch a video or whatever. Like, I'm actually so much more aware of what that experience was like. And then I can also kind of transfer that experience to, modern day things that are happening, maybe not even so much in the United States, but maybe in some other countries, with limited resources because of war, and propaganda that still kind of happens, and propaganda, just having discussions of even propaganda when we see TV commercials now during the elections. So just so useful. But again, one rubric it was so divergent the way that you could approach this through universal design for learning, versus the teacher who says, okay, everybody, you need to research World War II, and you're going to do a 5-page essay, and it's due on whatever date. And then that was it. Or, someone presents in front of class something they wrote, and that's it. Which, I remember those days in school. So anyway, it's exciting. I'm really thrilled as we get into Module 6. So my computer is working, and we'll see where things go. Hopefully we'll have our next module, which will be done through the webcam. Not the webcam, my new camcorder, which is on its way any day. And I was kind of get a laugh when I look into your Gmail box. Has your regular mail, and then it has the ads that come in. And I always get ads, from LL Bean, which I don't, there's like no way to unsubscribe to that no matter what. And nothing against LL Bean, it's a great company, but they hit unsubscribe at the bottom, and then you're unsubscribed, like that, I'm still subscribed. So, but that has not become nearly the spam attack that this company I buy, air filters, I had a new furnace put in. And so I have it's kind of specialty filters because it's a unique system that merged in with an older system. But like twice a day, I get ads, emails from this company, order now 10% off, and this new whatever. I'm like, I change a furnace filter like twice a year. Like I mean, I guess it's one thing if you're getting an ad for something that you're consuming at a pretty regular basis. But I'm thinking I do not need an air filter. I don't need to order air filters every week. I'm pretty good right now, and I still have like extra air filters left. But yeah, it's like twice a day. Um, so I just get a kick out of it because it's one of those things obviously where it's such a slow use product of why you need to do that kind of heavy saturated promotion. But they are good filters, and I'm not going to name the company. I do appreciate the quality of it, but I'm a little afraid to unsubscribe because they do have good deals. So I don't know, kind of in a pickle there. But so I want to appreciate everybody's posting. You've continued to be very active, and one thing I appreciate too is you're putting depth into your post. And I don't see that always in classes where you have a 4, 5, 6 paragraph response. And again, not saying you have to do that, but generally, you've put together very thorough responses, very candid, pick up the nuance parts of what's going on in your district, and then people build off of that. Have done a great job. So you're a really special class in that regard because that's not common probably in the class, all of the classes, to go to that depth. There's something special about kind of the mix we have right here. So I appreciate that. So I will update the grade book soon. So don't worry about that, and you'll see a posting when that actually happens. And then I will post next week Module 7, and then there's an extended period of time to work on that. That's our last module, and that's the one where you will have your Bill Porter plan, and I'll talk about that once we get to that module, and that'll be fun. Trust me, that'll be fun to write. So I would say with UDL, the one thing is people tend to be redundant when they're posting the videos from YouTube. I don't know if they kind of go into and pick out the first 2 or 3 that they find. So if anything, maybe dig around a little bit on YouTube for different UDL videos. That would be my only recommendation. So again, I appreciate everybody's work. I am glad to have my system back where I can do my webcams, and hopefully this turns out. It's a strange feeling because the system I have is coming to an end. After this class, I'm going to be doing it differently. And I actually did like the fireplace setup the last couple. I thought that kind of had a nice feel to it, but this has better resolution to it. Plus it doesn't limit me to the 20 minutes. And then we'll see what happens once I get the camcorder where I'll be filming live from next. And just want to be able to bring some interviews and real-time interviews into the class too. I have so many opportunities to do that, but I don't have the means because I don't have the camera yet. Come on, Amazon. So, and yes, I don't know if we're going to be having winter coats, winter boots, sandals, shorts, what kind of hats we're going to be wearing, if we're going to have our visors on. It's going to be crazy because by the next time I do this, it could be 60 or 70 degrees. Who knows? But definitely tonight it was snow pellets, and it was very windy, which is not cool for an April 8th. And I remember last year taking my bike out probably like 5 times and doing like 70-mile trips by this time easily. And I brought my daughter's bikes up last weekend, and they got in one good day. I think Sunday was good for weather, Saturday or Sunday. But they got in one day of biking, and then now the rest of the weeks, the bikes are in the front because it's either been snowing here or it's 25 degrees. So it's kind of torture when you're a kid to have your bike brought up and then it has to sit in the front of the garage. But yeah, it won't be long. It won't be long. So, but please have a uh, great week. Stay healthy. A lot of people are getting cold, so take care of yourself. Get some rest. And I think, with everybody having to be indoors so much right now too. And just continue to finish strong in this course. You're all doing a wonderful job. You should be very proud of the work that you're doing. And I'm telling you, you are really a great class. And not to say, I haven't had great classes. All the classes are, but I'm telling you guys are great. So, pat yourself on the back. You're doing a wonderful job. So have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in about a week, and we will prepare then for our final module, and we're getting close to this being done. And I think for me, 9 weeks from today, school's done. So, wow. Again, thank you very much for all of your effort in this course.